All right, so go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Michael. I'm a senior planner with the planning department and the Barrio Logan Community Plan Update Project Manager. We're here tonight to present. This is our first sort of primary kickoff on the Barrio Logan workshop. And we will, I will turn it over first to Councilmember Vivian Moreno to provide some introductory remark. Just as a reminder, thank you, Kristen, that please be sure to select the language in which you would like to listen in the meeting. There is a, on the bar, there's a little global icon and you can choose either Spanish or English. If you prefer to hear this in Spanish, you have to choose Spanish to hear the interpretation. And then I will, actually, let me go ahead and have Kristen sort of say that in Spanish for those who may be listening in. Okay, so I would check the chat function if you need to. I think you need to click on the globe to hear Kristen and her interpretation. So just real quick, again, I introduced myself. With us tonight also Leslie Keaveney, who is a senior planner in the planning department, and Leslie has done a lot of work to help us in creating the maps and was instrumental in getting the survey up and running and really digesting a lot of this information into a manner that we're able to present. So a lot of credit goes to Leslie for all of her effort. And with that, I will turn it over to Councilmember Moreno to make some remarks. Thank you, Councilmember.
Good afternoon. Can you guys, I think I'm not able to use my video. I don't know if you can, if the host can give me access to that, but first and foremost, good evening to everybody. I'm Vivian, the San Diego City Council member for District 8, which includes the community of Barrio Logan. I want to thank you for attending the first community workshop for the Barrio Logan Community Plan update. When the process of updating the community plan began in 2013, Barrio Logan was the only community in the city without a planning group. Although efforts to update the plan 7 years ago failed, a lasting legacy of the process was the creation of the Barrio Logan Planning Group. The fact that we're gathered here tonight is a testament to the power of the community, and I'm delighted to see many residents continuing to stay engaged in the struggle. After decades of having an outdated plan, which has allowed harmful mixed uses, this is an opportunity to provide input. You each have a voice and a say in what the future of our community looks like. Since being elected, I've been adamant that this planning group be the place where the update was produced, and that it must be a community-driven effort. These workshops hosted by the city are an important way for residents to learn and decide how this plan update will affect Barrio Logan. As we know, the asthma rates in Barrio Logan are amongst the highest in the state, and it's imperative that we have a community plan that protects the health and air quality for our children. I look forward to hearing your comments and for the implementation of a new plan update that is supported by the community. Thank you to the Barrio Logan Planning Group board members who made this possible, including our chairman, Mr. Mark Steele. I also want to thank the board members, Tom Ryan, Josie Talamantes, Tina Camarillo, Matt Carr, Mario Chacon, David Dua, Klaus Kulke, Filomena Marino, Dennis O'Connor, Eric Ortega, Hector Villegas, Hector Villegas, Rafael Castellanos from the Port of San Diego, the U.S. Navy Commander Mark Nazwa Dom-E, Michael Prince, our city planner, and to the Environmental Health Coalition for organizing this workshop. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Council Member. I would just like to echo that to thank specifically Mark and all of the planning group members, as well as the Environmental Health Coalition and everyone who has worked on this, including Diane and Ali and Julie in particular, and then obviously Dennis with NASCO and the Shipbuilders Coalition. All of the parties involved have been very helpful to me personally in terms of, one, getting my understanding of the community plan update process, and two, being very knowledgeable in helping us move towards a resolution. And so that's our goal tonight, to move through this process. So for what we want to provide back on the plan update, address the agreement that was prepared between the stakeholders, discuss land uses that are being considered as part of that agreement. Then we'll move forward and outline the timeline and next steps, and we will community survey. We've got polling questions that we have to gauge feedback through this. It's not only through the chat and ultimately at the end of the night through any potential questions that you may have, but just to sort of start us off, I just would like to see, go ahead and launch this poll. So for those of you who are attending tonight, what is your connection to the Barrio Logan community? You know, do you live here? Do you work here? Do you own a business or property? Or do you just visit the community, or is it, you know, other in terms of just working for an industry nearby? So we'll go ahead and leave this up for about, you know, roughly about a minute, maybe a little bit longer. And so I've seen about half the people take it so far, and it seems that about half the people work here, and you know, a third of the people work here so far, and a number of business owners here as well. So good to see sort of the diversity respondents so far. Okay, so so it looks like a lot of the people who are here tonight work here. There's some people who own a business, a few people who live here, and then a few who visit the community. So here are the results. I think everybody can see that. And obviously at the end of the night, when this is posted, we will go ahead and people who are unable to attend can watch this as well. So forgive me for the clunkiness of all of this. So there will be a couple of points that are here. So why did we update the plan? One is to identify land uses consistent with the general plan. As we move forward with all of our community plan update, we want to ensure that the goals and policies that we establish at the community plan level are consistent with the overarching framework of the general plan in terms of not only the City of Villages strategy in locating new housing near transit, as well as shopping opportunities and opportunities for public spaces and spaces for play. We also look to address mobility and public access and access to public space, provide design guidance for new development, and in particular to Barrio Logan in terms of what occurred through the 2013 plan update was to really celebrate Barrio Logan's unique area within the city of San Diego as an arts and culture district, and to celebrate the culture and the legacy of the community. More specifically, in moving through the community plan update process, Barrio Logan's plan update was one of the oldest in the city of San Diego. Again, the current plan that's on the books was last updated in 1978. The goal of the 2013 update, and one of the major of this update, is to identify land uses that would separate residential and industrial uses. They're not side by side. And that is a key sort of component of the previous effort, and one that is certainly a major consideration as we move forward. So a lot of work went into the update that was adopted in 2013. It started in 2008 there was a 33-member stakeholder committee that was formed and met regularly, in fact, over 50 times throughout the process. And ultimately, with all of that community engagement and all of the staff and the technical analysis that went into that effort, the result of that were refined land use scenarios that were ultimately evaluated equally and presented to the decision makers for consideration. The land use goals that were established through that plan update were to eliminate future residential and industrial conflicts through land use and zoning changes, to establish a village area and increase housing opportunities, incorporate a transition zone that would provide a buffer between residences and industry, and to retain the waterfront's employment role in Barrio Logan. As part of this effort, the community plan established 5 distinct neighborhoods that identified specific land use recommendations for each area. In part, these neighborhoods were based on the existing land use pattern within the community itself. And so I'm gonna go through just a couple of slides here, which outline some of the urban design and land use recommendations that are included in the 2013 plan, which is available on the City of San Diego's website. Within the community village area, the area promoted mixed use development, identified parks and public spaces, and established multimodal connections that maintained the grid network within the community. The historic core area emphasized small scale infill development that fit in with the existing development pattern and the small scale lots and the small lots that are within the area, primarily between Evans and 28th Street, just north of Main Street. This identified also recommendations for and opportunities for live-work units as well. The Boston Avenue and Main Street area identified residential uses along Boston Avenue, as well as a linear park that would be located along the north side of Boston Avenue, and identified commercial uses along Main Street just north of the naval base on the south side. The prime industrial area emphasized maritime industrial jobs and designated much of the area for industrial uses and prime industrial uses that were really meant to promote the strong economic base and provide supportive uses and industries that cater to maritime industry, the port operations, and the naval operations within Barrio Logan. Finally, there was a transition area that was established in the 2013 plan that provided a transition between heavy industrial uses and the Barrio Logan community. In this area, the land was designated for community commercial use, and it prohibited residential use between Harbor Drive and Main Street. And so ultimately, this was the land use plan that was adopted by City Council in 2013. At full build out of the community plan, meaning assuming that most of the uses build out to what the community plan would allow, there would be approximately 13,500 residents living within Barrio Logan and approximately 3,800 homes within Barrio Logan as well at the build out based on the 2013 plan. So how did we get from 2013 to where we are today? So in 2013, as we mentioned, the plan update was adopted and a programmatic environmental impact report was certified by the City Council. In 2014, due to concerns from the shipbuilding industry regarding where operations could be located and could not be located and the types of uses that would be allowed, a referendum was put on the ballot, and ultimately the community plan and the associated zoning were repealed by referendum and by a citywide vote. The repeal, however, did not include the certified environmental impact report. So it's kind of a technical component, but ultimately what we can do is utilize the technical and environmental analysis from that effort to help inform the changes that we want to make going forward with the continued plan update. In 2019, the Barrio Logan Planning Group, the Environmental Health Coalition, and the shipbuilding and ship repair industry met to identify community plan update changes that would ultimately resolve the issues of disagreement that occurred through that resulted between 2013 and 2014. And in 2020, earlier this year, we as staff, the planning department, worked with the Barrio Logan Planning Group over multiple meetings to identify an approach to complete the community plan update process. And so we really thank the planning group in particular for providing us with the direction and the input so that we can move this forward in a manner that is respectful of the process and allows for community engagement and community input. And so just to recap, what we have is on the left, you can see the 1978 land use map, which has a mixture of residential, commercial, and industrial uses throughout much of Barrio Logan. And that is the plan that is on the books today. That's the community plan that applies and the zoning that applies to land uses and to new development that is now coming forward in Barrio Logan, and that has come forward in the past 5 to 10 years and beyond that as well. On the right, you can see the land use plan, which did separate residential and industrial uses and provided commercial buffer in between. That was the plan that was rescinded by referendum. So to just provide a little bit more background on the agreement to restart the plan, the Environmental Health Coalition, the Barrio Logan Planning Group, and the shipbuilding and ship repair industry got together in 2019 and met to address areas of conflict that resulted in the referendum. What was known as a Memorandum of Understanding, or an MOU, was to identify a transition of uses from the port and naval base operations to the residential community, while allowing for continued maritime commercial operations to operate adjacent to the port. The MOU is a pretty detailed list of uses that would be allowed and would be prohibited within specific areas of the community. The proposed land uses, there were 5 land use categories in all, and what this next segment of the presentation will go through is each of those land use areas one by one. And ultimately what that did is provide sort of a transition of uses, again, from your heavy industrial users and port and maritime uses on port and naval land, all the way over to residential uses along Boston Avenue. So the proposal, this is the sort of focusing in on the agreement area. It encompasses land bounded by mostly Evans Street on the west and the northwest, Harbor Drive on the south and west, Boston Avenue and Newton Avenue on the north, and the recycling yard on the east. And all this encompasses 65 acres, or roughly 7% of the total 1,000 acres of Barrio Logan. So in all of the, and all that occurred from 2013 to 2020, where we are today, most of the land uses that were completed as part of that plan update are recommended to move forward by the agreement to not change from 2013. That was probably worded pretty poorly, but essentially this is the only area where changes are being proposed to the 2013 plan. And so as we move forward one tonight and then in subsequent meetings with the planning group, really the discussion is going to be on 65 acre area thereabouts and identify sort of what the MOU or the agreement sort of got right, what changes need to be made, and then what refinements also need to be made, and we'll discuss that as well. So to begin with, after that sort of long ramblingness, I apologize, but the proposal would prohibit new industrial uses in all areas, in all 4 focus areas of the agreement. So that was the first thing. Now moving forward into the maritime commercial area, this is bounded by Harbor and Main Street, roughly from Evans Street down to 28th. Currently the area has a mixture of industrial, warehouse, and parking lot uses. And the 1978 plan, which is the current adopted plan, allowed for industrial uses within this area. Comparing what the draft 2013 plan allowed and the 2020 proposed agreement allowed, and just as a sort of a way of a preview, we're going to go through this sort of format for all 5 areas that will be discussed tonight. 2013 plan identified community commercial as the land use designation for this area. This identified commercial services that cater to the maritime industry and would also allow for other types of commercial uses such as office space. The plan explicitly prohibited new industrial uses and new residential uses. The 2020 proposed agreement identified a land use designation of maritime commercial uses. Again, the intent is to identify specified maritime commercial uses and marine-oriented uses that serve the maritime industry, as well as other associated commercial uses like office space. Similarly, the 2020 agreement prohibited industrial uses and residential uses. So I'm gonna stop here and ask a sort of a question through our poll is, should the maritime commercial area limit uses to only allow for marine-oriented commercial and other commercial uses? Because ultimately, as we move forward with this discussion, this is what we're to be asking of the community. So this poll is live for people to take. And by the way, just so you know, the chat function is open for everyone. So if there are questions that you have through the, throughout the evening or as I'm going through these, you can make a note here and I can address them at the end of the meeting, or we can discuss further. I'm going to leave the poll up for probably another 30 seconds to a minute, just to allow people to review the difference between the two agreements and then allow everyone to vote. Okay, just a couple, probably give it about 10 more seconds and then we'll move on. I'll share the results and move on to this. Okay, so we had about 24 votes here, and the majority of the people voted to recommend that this area limit uses to maritime and other commercial uses. Some people were under, and 3 people said no. Similar question like this will be included in the survey that will be launched on the website, and then for other people who were unable to attend tonight. And obviously, as we move forward with the planning group meeting and the subsequent meetings, we allow for a more iterative dialogue through this process to really discuss those uses. I saw that Diane Takvorian made a comment in the chat, and it's worth mentioning here that the 2020 agreement doesn't prohibit uses other than maritime commercial. It hopes to facilitate those uses, but other commercial uses that aren't on the prohibited list are allowed. So basically, there's a list of uses in the MOU, and you can go to the website to get a copy of that. It's a pretty detailed list. And so it's not necessarily to be restrictive on the commercial front, but on sort of the heavier commercial components and certainly on the industrial components. The agreement that was reached between those stakeholders did identify those industrial uses and those that would require either a permit for hazardous materials or would have, other types of issues related to that. Those uses would be prohibited going forward. So keep that in mind. Okay, moving on to the community commercial area. So this area includes a segment of land between Evans Street and 28th Street on the north side of Maine, and it stops the alley. So it doesn't go all the way to Newton, and it does not go all the way to Boston Avenue. And again, the area here is a mixture of industrial uses, parking lot uses, and Woodbury University most notably. The 1978 plan does allow for industrial use within this area. As part of the 2013 draft plan, this area was identified for neighborhood commercial uses, so uses such as retail shops and restaurants and services that are more locally oriented. The 2013 plan would prohibit industrial and residential uses in this area. In the 2020 proposed agreement, the area was identified for community commercial use. Here, it would provide retail shops and commercial offices and commercial uses that are intended to serve sort of the Barrio Logan community and allow for a little bit more flexibility in terms of the operations of some of those commercial uses. but the agreement did prohibit industrial, marine-oriented, commercial, and residential uses. And so I'll go ahead and implement poll number, now we're on what, number 3? So should the community commercial area allow for only commercial uses, or should there be other uses that should be considered in this area? And I'll go ahead and leave this up for about 90 seconds to allow people to take this. And I will note that there's one property owner who has voiced his opposition to the proposed agreement, Dave Dewey, who is regularly involved with the planning group, very active, and he has sent the city a letter, and he has also made his preference known that the property on a segment of Main Street should allow for residential going forward. This is not what the agreement currently allows, but it is something that has been expressed by Dave in particular, and is something that will be presented and discussed with the planning group moving forward. So I'll go ahead and stop talking for a second. So again, I'm going to go ahead in the chat here to put, you can get this information on planbarrio.org. And I'll go ahead and put the link in here again, because I know that there's a couple of chats that have sort of come through. So we'll give it about another 30 seconds. And again, this area really represents, in terms of the agreement, another sort of transition area from sort of heavier and maritime commercial uses identified between Main and Harbor, and then the neighboring sort of residential uses that you see closer along Newton, Boston Avenue, and just east of Main Street as well. Okay, so I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So obviously these are all very small sample sizes for the statistician nerds out there. So we're not making this to that this is somehow definitive of everybody's input on this. We know that there's a great number of people who are unable to attend tonight, and we look to get their engagement outside of this effort. But we do see more of a split here. There was 10 people who recommended in support of limiting it to commercial uses, and 9 people who were against, and 4 that were unsure. So again, this represents some of the issues that we're going to have to work through with the planning group and move forward through this process. So we'll go ahead, and all of this again will be posted on the website. Both the recording of this and the presentation as well. Okay, so the neighborhood commercial area, and this area represents blocks that are from East Evans Street all the way over to 32nd Street on the west and the north side Evans Street, and on the south and the east side 32nd Street. It covers the half block between Newton and the alley, so it doesn't go all the way down to Main Street, and it also covers, and then it's sort of juts down to Boston Avenue. And then finally along Main Street across from the Naval Yards. Here there is a mix of industrial, commercial, and residential uses. The 1978 plan does allow for basically what's there today, a mix of residential, commercial, and industrial uses. So this is where, at least thus far, we're seeing our first sort of major distinction between what the 2013 plan allowed and what the 2020 proposed agreement identified. So in the 2013 plan, most of this area was identified neighborhood commercial uses, and some of it was identified for commercial uses. We've sort of gone over those, so I probably don't need to repeat that. But I just would like to emphasize that in the plan that was ultimately adopted by City Council, it prohibited industrial and prohibited residential within this area. There was a segment of this area that was analyzed to allow for residential, but ultimately what was adopted by council in 2013 prohibited residential in all of the areas shown on the yellow map here. The 2020 proposed agreement would allow for neighborhood commercial, so your retail shops, your restaurants, commercial offices, and it would allow for residential or open space uses as well. So this area would introduce residential development where it's currently not allowed by the 2013 plan. But it would prohibit maritime commercial uses, and it would prohibit industrial uses. So the question that I wanted to pose on this one in particular is for, should the neighborhood commercial area allow for residential uses? I think that is the most significant distinction, and one that we will need to work through moving forward. So I'll go ahead again, allow people about a minute to vote through this. And like I said, this area represents roughly, I should know these numbers off the top of my head, but it's probably about 15 to 20 acres, you know, of the agreement area. So I'm sorry about that. And I'll have the precise acreage numbers available at the planning group meeting. We can discuss those, but generally it would introduce new residential development. So there's a question here, how does this affect existing industrial companies? You know, we can sort of cover that later, but the one thing that, just to clarify, is that the city does have previously conforming regulations. Basically, it allows for any property that has permits that date to a previous plan or previously approved zone, that use can continue with the rights that were granted at that time. So it doesn't affect the industrial use. There are limits on the ability to expand that use further. So adding new square footage or adding new space to that may be limited, and it could require some form of community review and a discretionary permit. But existing uses on site that were permitted and approved through a previous effort or proposal are allowed to continue. So I'll go ahead and give it another 10 or 15 seconds, and then we'll move on to the Boston Avenue residential area. Okay, so about 24 people voted, and it appears that the majority of the people, 67%, or I should share these results. There you go. Do support adding residential to this area. So the discussion will be with the planning group in terms of, you know, again, taking the input that we received tonight, taking the input that we received from the survey, and sort of seeing what other input we received to determine if it is appropriate to add residential year consistent with the agreement, or if there need to be modifications to that. So, okay, moving on to the Boston Avenue residential area. I think we can move through this one fairly quickly, just because currently it's a mixture of single and multifamily uses on Boston Avenue, and then to the alley just north of Main Street. It's between 28th and 32nd Street. It's mostly residential uses. There may be an office or two in there, but as far as I know, it's predominantly residential and predominantly single family. The plan does allow for exclusively residential uses, the current 1978 plan. The 2013 draft plan allowed for residential, and the 2020 proposed agreement also allowed for residential. So there's no real inconsistency there in terms of other conflicting uses or a change in the type of use. Both prohibit industrial and commercial when it was prohibited as part of the 1978 plan. The one distinction is that the 2013 draft plan allows for single and multifamily housing in a low medium density range, 10 to 14 dwelling units per acre. And the agreement did not specify a density range for the residential within this area. And I should probably qualify, going back to the neighborhood commercial, that the agreement of the stakeholders also did not specify a residential density range. So that'll be something that'll be a discussion for a future meeting with the community in terms of what is the appropriate residential density to incorporate in areas where residential will be allowed. And so this one should be a relatively straightforward question, is that should the Boston Avenue residential area continue to only allow residential uses? One thing to note that was identified in the 2013 plan was the opportunity for a linear park on the north side of Boston Avenue between, you know, Boston Avenue right-of-way and the I-5. So that is something that is a recommendation that will still, you know, carry forward, and it's something that we will consider through the process. So I will keep this open for another 30, 45 seconds to allow people to vote. We're roughly getting about, you know, 20 to 30 votes of about the, you know, just under the 50. I think we have 47 participants total right now, with 43 people able to vote. So again, appreciate everybody's ability to provide their input on this process, and also just for being here tonight. Okay. So again, like I said, just to reiterate that as we start to move forward, I'll go ahead and stop this poll right now. I think it's everybody who's wanted to vote has voted, and this is the one that's where most people have said it makes sense to continue to allow for only residential uses within this area. So again, it's something to consider as we move forward through this process, and something that we'll evaluate. But that we will continue to work with the community, and we'll evaluate the information we receive through the survey process as well. Okay, so the final area that we wanted to address was the recycling yard. I'll make a point of distinction here that the MOU did not differentiate the recycling yard from the rest of the neighborhood commercial area. So this area is currently just east of 32nd, north of Main, and then south of Boston Avenue, and bounded by Choice Creek as well, and I-5. So it's currently a metal processing and recycling yard, and the 78 plan allowed for residential, commercial, and industrial uses. So it allowed a mix of those through the land use of the 78 community plan. In 2013, the adopted community plan identified heavy commercial land uses and commercial services, including vehicular sales and services, to be allowed on the site through the heavy commercial land use designation. It would prohibit industrial uses and prohibit residential uses. As part of the 2020 proposed agreement, the land use designation, or the land use that would be identified, would be a neighborhood commercial land use, again, similar to what was being proposed just further west along Main Street and along portions of Newton Street as well. Here, the retail shops and commercial offices would be allowed, as well as residential uses and open space uses to be located here. It would prohibit industrial uses, and it would also prohibit maritime commercial uses. So the polling here, we'll go ahead, and this is the final poll of the night. So thank you for sitting through these, and go ahead. We'll go ahead and start that now. So this one, we just want to ask, rather than sort of a yes, no, we want to see what is the use that should be allowed for the recycle yard. Should it be the heavy commercial use that was identified with the 2013 plan? Should it be a community commercial use where it wouldn't allow for residential? Or should it be a neighborhood commercial use that would allow for residential? Yeah, so Juliet asked, would you please reiterate the existing use, previously conforming use issue, so that folks understand that no one will be kicked out? Yes, that is correct. Thank you, Julie. So even if the city council were to ultimately adopt a land use designation and a zone change that would change the site from allowing residential to prohibiting residential, the recycling yard operator would be allowed to continue their operations, and it would not be in violation or in conflict with the regulations that they had at the time that they received approval to operate a recycling yard at this location. What would occur is, as I mentioned previously, are the previously conforming regulations that are part of the city's municipal code. So essentially what this does is it requires, again, a community review and a discretionary permit to allow for continued operation to allow for an expansion of that use. So that's the continued operation would occur so long as they're operating in accordance with the approvals that they received at the time that the use started. But if they were looking to expand that use further, there would be limits on that if the zone were to change. So that is the distinction. So I'll go ahead and just give it probably about 10 or 15 more seconds for people to vote. Seeing again, about half the participants are voting here tonight. And again, all of this sort of represents the last question that we had of the night, that in terms of the Q&A through the polling that we established. These poll questions are going to be provided in survey format, a slightly different format, but through a survey that people can take online at planbarrio.org. There will be a link and it'll go up tonight. We will be also advertising this in the community so that people are aware of the survey just beyond, not only just the planning group members and through our email list, but also through, Facebook advertisement as well, so that the broader community will sort of have the opportunity to weigh in through that process. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And here we had sort of a mix of, there's 6 people who wanted to see heavy commercial, 6 people who wanted to see community commercial, and 10 to see neighborhood commercial to allow for residential. So again, there's obviously a clear split amongst the, or sort of there's no real consensus here. There's a lot of diverse opinions on the uses. And so this is one that we're, again, going to have to work with the community to really identify what is the appropriate use going forward, and weighing the pros and cons of each approach, because each of them does have their pros and cons. All right, so moving forward, just to sort of summarize the agreement and the next steps of the focus area is we're going to release the survey to generate feedback on the proposed land uses that we went through here tonight. And then in the next couple months, we will also begin the technical analysis. So in order to evaluate and move forward and ultimately get city council adoption of the community plan update, this requires, analysis consistent with the California Environmental Quality Act. We will be able to use the environmental impact report that was prepared as part of the 2013 plan update. That is still a certified document that allows us to utilize it, but there may be some particular studies related to traffic or noise or other specific issues that may need to be updated to reflect changes in uses, depending upon the input we receive from the community, property owners, stakeholders throughout this process. And so in looking at the overall plan update timeline and what we are looking, sort of the overall timeline, and again, this has been shared with the planning group and we've sort of discussed this a couple of times with the group, but this represents essentially the kickoff of the plan update process. We've done some previous legwork with the community, and obviously a lot of the heavy lifting was done in crafting the agreement by the stakeholders. So again, thank you to the MOU participants. But in this month, so October, November, and December, the fall and into the winter of this year, we'll work with the community planning group to go over the MOU land uses, evaluate whether or not there needs to be any changes to those land uses, and then are there any other issues that require additional revisions or modifications. We'll also have the opportunity to evaluate other potential issues such as access to parks and potential mobility connections and mobility issues. This is not meant to be sort of a complete redo or comprehensive community plan update. The planning group made it very clear that the focus and emphasis should be on identifying a consensus around the MOU and the agreement that was reached, and identifying a land use plan that reflects the base of the 2013 plan with the changes of the agreement. But there may be some other opportunities for things like evaluation of a couple of bicycle facility connections that we may want to refine slightly, or updating other maps or technical analysis that reflects current conditions. So those things we will discuss with the community again over the next 3 months at the regular planning group meeting. And then ultimately the goal is to present this for a final vote at the January meeting. However, the timeline could change based on what's presented through this effort. If there's a substantial change to what's identified in the MOU, it could result in major changes to the technical and environmental analysis. So that may impact the timeline. And ultimately, it'll be up to the community and the planning group to consider whether or not it's worth continuing that timeline and extending those, or whether that effort should be scaled back to ensure that we're consistent with the certified EIR, and that the overall program that we've sort of identified through this process can be completed in that timeline. And then finally, we'll move forward through the hearing process, again, assuming we have a consensus and that it's largely consistent with the work program that's been outlined, with the goal or sort of the potential target date of the June of 2021 for city council adoption. Again, it still has to go to the various hearing boards as shown here on the screen. So let me go ahead to the next slide. So here is just a preview of the survey. I just did a quick screenshot. This is again on planbarrio.org. This survey is live. It'll be live tonight. And it be open for 4 weeks. So we will close it on November 6th, which is, I believe, a Thursday or a Friday. And then in addition to the survey and the input we received through that, we will have regular meetings with the Barrio Logan Planning Group to discuss these issues going forward. How to stay involved. So obviously there's the ability to sign up on the website and provide feedback that way. Provided here is my contact information as well. You can email me if you have any questions. I've already received emails from, I know Rachel Ortiz has sent me an email. I know the Environmental Health Coalition, some of the Diane and Julie and Allie have reached out as well. Some property owners have reached out, and then general residents have inquired as well. So my email box is always available, and we will take that input and convey it back to the planning group for consideration. Additionally, this is my telephone number. It's my work phone number. I will be updating my voicemail to add a message here so that people can leave a voicemail, and I'll make sure that if for those who speak Spanish, I will be able to translate that message. And then any voicemail that's received pertaining to Barrio Logan Plan Update, that information will be tabulated and conveyed back to the community. In sort of discussions with some community members, we don't anticipate a lot of people wanting to call and leave me a voicemail on this, but we do want to have that opportunity available. And so with that, I think I'm done. I've been talking at you for a long time, and I appreciate everybody's patience and their engagement and involvement through this process through tonight. And obviously thank you to Leslie Keaveney for really helping me move forward through this process and basically doing all of the real work. But let's go ahead and I will stop sharing my screen for a second. And if there are any questions that you have, if you want to use the raise your hand function, we will go ahead and open it up for people to either ask questions, or you could also, if you prefer to provide comments in the chat, we could do that as well. And so I'll just do that for a couple, see if I can find, see if anybody has their hand raised or if anybody wants to say anything. Again, you could also use the chat function as well. We'll go ahead and do that for a couple minutes. And so let's see, stop share. So you can go ahead and just see us, and let's see if anybody's, I don't see anybody raising their hand yet. Thank you, Leslie. Wave to everyone. So, and then thank you, Kristen, for being here and interpreting as well, and all of your services. Yes, Dennis asked, did somebody record the first part of the meeting? Yes, this meeting has been recorded, and it will be posted on the website once we have sort of the recording finalized and available. So that'll be available, as well as the PowerPoint. We'll turn it into a PDF format so that people can see. And I can see the council members on here. He's also welcome to make any closing comments as well. Anybody who has any comments or questions, like I said, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we can probably end this a little earlier than I anticipate so that everybody can go watch the Padre game or something else. So Diane asked a question. Can you please repeat the time period for the survey? I said November 6th, which could be difficult with all of the attention on the election until November 3rd. Can that be extended? Yes, Julie also mentioned the debate, the vice presidential debate, which I will say that there is a vice presidential debate, or so I'm made aware. Going back to the survey, we typically have our surveys available for 4 weeks. That's a standard process that we do for many of our plan updates. And I'll see Mark Steele, I'll let him talk in a second. But yes, there is a desire to extend the survey beyond that time if we don't, for whatever reason, get enough people, or if it creates issues with that election date, we can absolutely extend. This is not meant to be a survey that is sort of limiting for people's time. It's really just, it's helpful for us and for respondents to have an end date to sort of know that when something needs to occur, so that also we can start to evaluate the input and the information we received. I'll say that we've been fairly successful in some of our other survey efforts throughout the city. Mira Mesa just wrapped up a survey, and I know they received, I believe, 700 or 800 respondents. You know, in an effort that we were working on through Hillcrest, we received nearly 800 respondents. So it does take time to go through all of those responses, prepare the analysis, and sort of identify what the trends are or what the input being received. But with that said, we are certainly open to extending that if it needs to be extended. So with that, I will turn it over to Mark Steele. Mr. Chair, the floor is yours. I have asked to unmute. I think you're still on mute, Mark. So let's see if I do it this way. I'll give him 1 second. I promoted Mark to panelist just to see if that may make it easier.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep. There you go, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, and I want to thank Leslie and Councilmember Moreno and all the planning staff. I want to thank the Environmental Health Coalition and certainly the shipbuilders and ship repair for bringing us to this point. This is very exciting. And I think I speak for everyone in the community, and particularly the planning group, to see us finally kick off this process. It's been years in the making, and we're thrilled to be here. So you guys are doing a great job, and we're very happy you're here and you're guiding us through it. And so can't wait to see it all done. Can't wait for that June hearing. But thanks to all of you.
Great, thank you, Mark, and thank you, because I know that you were obviously very instrumental in working through the MOU process, and obviously in all the things that you chair through the planning group, not only just in normal times, but also in this transition in our current Zoom environment. So again, thank you for that. Okay, is there anybody else who wishes to raise their hand or add anything else to the discussion? Maybe a minute or two. All right, so hearing really no other comments, I don't see anything else in the chat. I think we can go ahead and end this meeting. So what we'll do, like I said, is later this evening or early tomorrow, we will post the survey to the website. We will post the recording of this meeting tonight, and we will also and then we'll start advertising the survey and getting that out. We hope everybody can take it. Again, for the people who are not here tonight, to provide that input. And for those of you, I know some regulars, I will see you at the planning group meeting on the 21st, so 2 weeks from today. And we'll have a similar discussion and get some more of the details. And for everybody else, thank you for your time tonight. Go Padres. All right. See you all. Have a good night. Thank you.